and it can be stated with certainty that if the other three armored cars had shown up, Colonel Bulbotun would have been forced to evacuate Pekhorsk. But they did not appear. This happened because no less a person than the celebrated Lieutenant Mikhail Shpalyansky, who had been personally decorated with the St. George's Cross by Alexander Kerensky in May 1917, was appointed to command one of the four excellent vehicles which comprised the Hetman's armored car troop. Mikhail Shpalyansky was dark and clean-shaven, except for a pair of velvet sideburns, and he looked exactly like Eugene Onegin. Shpalyansky made himself known throughout the city as soon as he arrived there from St. Petersburg. He made a reputation as an excellent reader of his own verse at the poetry club known as the Ashes, also as an excellent organizer of his fellow poets and as chairman of the school of poetry known as the Magnetic Trilet. Not only was Mikhail Shpalyansky an unrivaled orator and could drive any sort of vehicle, civilian or military, but he also kept a ballerina from the opera theater and another lady whose name Shpalyansky, like the perfect gentleman that he was, revealed to no one. He also had a great deal of money, which he disbursed in generous loans to the members of the Magnetic Trilet. He drank white wine, played chemin de fer, bought a picture called Lenitian Girl Bathing. At night time he lived on the Kreshchatek, in the mornings he lived in the Café Bilboshke, in the afternoon in his comfortable room in the Hotel Continental, in the evening at the Ashes, whilst he devoted the small hours to a scholarly work on the intuitive in Gogol. The Hetman's city perished 3 hours earlier than it should have done because on the evening of December 2, 1918, in the Ashes Club, Mikhail Shpalyansky announced the following to Stepanov, Shiir, Slanik and Cheremshin, the leading lights of the Magnetic Trilet. They were all swine, the Hetman, and Petliura too. But Petliura's worse, because he's an anti-Semite as well. But that's not the real trouble. The fact is I'm bored, because it's so long since I threw any bombs. After dinner at the Ashes, paid for by Shpalyansky, all the members of the Magnetic Trilet plus a fifth man, slightly drunk and wearing a mohair overcoat, left with Shpalyansky, who was dressed in an expensive fur coat with a beaver collar, and a fur hat. Spalyansky knew a little about his fifth companion: firstly, that he was syphilitic; secondly, that he wrote atheistic poetry which Spalyansky with his better literary connections arranged to have published in one of the Moscow literary magazines, and thirdly that the man, whose name was Rusakov, was the son of a librarian. The man with syphilis was weeping all over his mohair coat under the electric street lighting on the Khreshchatyk and saying, as he buried his face in the beaver fur lapels of Spalyansky's coat, "Spalyansky, you are the strongest man in this whole city, which is rotting away just as I am. You're such a good fellow that one can even forgive you for looking so disgustingly like Eugene Onegin." "Listen, Spalyansky, it's positively indecent to look like Onegin. Somehow you're too healthy? But you lack that spark of ambition which could make you the really outstanding personality of our day. Here am I rotting to death, and proud of it. You're too healthy, but you're strong, strong as a steel spike, so you ought to thrust your way upwards to the top. Look, like this." And Rusakov showed him how to do it. Clasping the lamppost, he started to wind his way up it, making himself as long and thin as a grass snake. A bevy of prostitutes walked by dressed in green, red, black and white hats, pretty as dolls, and called out cheerfully, "Hey, had a couple too many? How about it, darling?" The sound of gunfire was very far away and Spalyansky really did look like Onegin in the lamplit snow. "Go to bed," he said to the syphilitic acrobat, turning his head away slightly so that the man should not cough over him. "Go on." He gave the mohair coat a push with the tips of his fingers. As his black fur gloves touched the coat, the other man's eyes were quite glassy. The two men parted. Spalyansky called a cab, told the driver "Maloprovolnaya," and drove away, as Mohair staggered home to Podol. That night in Podol, in his room in the librarian's apartment, the owner of the mohair coat stood naked to the waist in front of a mirror, holding a lighted candle in his hand. Diabolical fear flickered in his eyes, his hands were shaking, and as he talked his lips quivered like a child's. "Oh my God, my God, my God. It's horrible." That evening, I'm so unhappy. Cher was there with me too, yet he's all right, he didn't catch this infection because he's a lucky man. Maybe I should go and kill that girl who gave it to me. But what's the point? Can anybody tell me, what would be the point? Oh Lord, Lord. I'm 24 and I might have another 15 years' time, perhaps less, and the pupils of my eyes will have changed color, my legs will have rotted, then they'll lapse into mad idiotic babbling and then, I shall be a rotten, sodden corpse. The thin naked torso was reflected in the dusty mirror, the candle guttered in his upraised hand and there was a faint blotchy rush on his chest. Tears poured uncontrollably down the sick man's cheeks, and his body shook and twitched. I ought to shoot myself. But I haven't the strength, why should I lie to you, oh my God? Why should I lie to my own reflection? From the drawer of a small, delicate, lady's writing desk he took out a thin book printed on horrible gray paper. On the cover was printed in red letters, Phantomists Futurists. Verses by M. Spalyansky, B. Friedman, V. Sharkovich, I. Rusakov, Moscow, 1918.